Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my precious pack, and welcome back once more to VEGA Conflict. At first, we had the garbage truck. Then it got upgraded into the garbage truck 2.0. Now we have something completely new. We have something so powerful that it can only be referred to us peasants as a god. We now have the Zeus. At first, when I heard about the ship and the stats and things like that, primarily the firing arc was the first thing I heard about, and it was a little bit awkward because I heard that it was an old school cutter style firing arc, and then I thought, oh great, it's going to be another garbage truck. This thing makes frigates look like garbage. This ship is called the Trash Master in my eyes because it is the greatest thing to ever have come to clean up the game. You heard that right. I'm praising the ship, and I haven't even had hands-on experience with it yet. First off, we're going to be comparing it very heavily to the frigate and the Renaissance battle cruiser, and you'll see why once I click the modifiers tab. This little ship has 5 weapon slots by default. It only has 2 armor slots, but that's completely okay, because I mean, it brings heavy shielding along with it. This little thing is just... I can't describe the excitement that I have towards the coming of this ship. It's going to be something so entertaining, so stupidly fun that... Let's just compare it real quick. Stats, movement speed, and stuff like that. Phoenix Frigate, 400 meters per second, top forward movement speed. Strafe, 280, turning speed, 32. Well, guess what? Get blown out of the water. Check this out, you nub. Look at that. 420 meters per second forward by default. 35 degrees per second of rotation. 400, let's say that again, 420 meters per second of strafe. There isn't a single ship in the game that I can think of that can strafe faster than it. What that means is we can give it strafe thrusters and do a little bit of a stupidly entertaining tactic, and we can have it move sideways as fast as an enemy ship can move forwards. So in turn, you could tactically position this ship and move sideways at the rate an enemy vessel is going forwards. They would not be able to outrun you either, because again, you can just run them down. And in close quarters combat, this is going to be a very interesting ship. I can't wait to test it against the DDOS targets, just like what I did with the Renaissance. But here's the difference. I'm going to expect a fleet of Mark I Zeus ships to win against a level 110 target, and naturally I'm going to back the Zeuses up because Mark I, everything's naturally fragile. They're not going to have the full shields, full weapons, and stuff like that. But one thing the Zeus has going for it that no other Altairian ship has by default, other than the Sovereign Carrier, is this. It has innate shield regeneration. Yes, you heard me right, and you're reading it right. And it has no recharge delay. That's a permanent fix. Remember how I said that a good balance for them would be ensuring that they always had shields and enhanced their shields? Well, their smite also enhances this thing's shield defense, stuff like that. How? Upon taking a small amount of damage, and yes, I see that. It is not something related to Pharmacon stupid nonsense. It is actually just it taking damage. 600 damage to be precise, and it boosts the shield regeneration and enhances Ricochet, which I'll talk about in a minute. But look at this, an additional 3% on top of it. And when you mark upgrade the ship at Mark Elite, from what I've read through the stats on the forum post, it gets a 4% regeneration per second. And the smite, if I'm not mistaken, boosts it up to over 10%, or boosts it to 9%. I'm going to have to read through the forum post again, because I was reading through it and I was skimming it. But at Elite, this damage value gets dropped down to only 300 damage to enter the optimum shield boost. Now, these stats don't really change. The weapon speed increases, but shield defense doesn't, but I mean, 10% when its overdrive activates. Now, that all depends on how it's applied. Is it going to be applied as a value fixed on the current value of the shields, which is 90%, so you only get 10% of 90, which is only 0.9, so you get less than 1%? Or is it going to give you the full shield defense? You're going to have a 100% protection rating. Well, not quite 100%, because you never get 100%. But if it does, that means that you can go toe-to-toe with a Pharmacon target, and your shield will be active and tanking all the damage. Irrelevant of the shield type, irrelevant of which shell you're using, stuff like that, it will be tanking all the damage. And on top of that, this thing's abilities affect the Ricochet mechanic. And what is the Ricochet mechanic? Think of it this way. It is the chaining mechanic 2.0 in a nutshell. How it behaves is if you use the Zeus along with the glass cannon that was added with it, the glance cannon, which I'll show off in just a second, you have a area behind the target for 3,750 meters that if you fire and an enemy is within that area, the round will bounce to that target and deal 100% of the round's initial damage. And the thing fires like a shotgun. Yeah, you heard that right. The glance cannon fires like a shotgun. So, if you mix this thing with range against a large AI fleet, oh boy, the destruction that you will wreak, because all it takes is you firing once. If the overdrive on the ship is active when you fire, you're going to be chaining through effectively every target, and there is a maximum number of targets you can hit. A single target cannot be hit more than 5 times. The number of times a item can bounce is heavily based on the ship that you're using as well as everything else. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the Ricochet details. You get 2 additional ricochets and the ricochet angle becomes 360, so at that point, just for it taking damage, it essentially becomes a chaining weapon that can bounce in any direction for 3,750 meters in any direction. Any of them at all. And it gets better, because the ship itself adds, by default, ricochet details. It gives +1 to the ricochet, and here comes the real fun one, 65 degrees, which will come into effect when I show you what the stats of the weapon are. But even better than that, you get a 10% increased damage modifier on that ricochet. So it's going to be doing 10% more damage to the target behind the initial target you hit. So let's say you hit a target for 2,000 damage. The next target in the land is going to take 2,200 damage. And I do not think it stacks, so the damage does not go up per strike. It's most likely based off of the initial strike on the target, but if it is based off of the individual targets, then that's going to mean that for every ricochet you get and it bounces, it's going to be increasing by that 10% damage, or the 20% at the max rank. It's going to be going 2,000, 2,200. And if it goes up by the base, it's going to go 2,400, or if it increases based off the original number, it's going to be 2,200 increased by additional 10%. You see what I'm getting at? Stupidly broken, stupidly fun, and from what I understand, the ship looks extremely small. Now, I immediately thought, it's extremely small, it moves like a madman, and it hits like a freight train, all the while it has a shield that just continuously regenerates due to its abilities. Now naturally, it has to have some drawback, and it actually does. Its health is going to be its drawback, and its maximum weight. You're going to have to fit these little guys very carefully, but more importantly, you're going to have to decide whether you're going to want maximum health, shields, firepower, or anything like that, because it only has by default 2 armor slots from what I saw and from what I understand. And I don't think it gets additional armor slots, because from what I understand from what I saw on the Discord, it gets an additional shield slot at Mark II, and it has 3 by default if I'm not mistaken. So you're getting a ship that is essentially an undying ship, because again, the larger your shield value is, the higher the regen value is, the more recharge, the more health, the more shield health you'll get back per second. You can effectively make a immortal ship. And with its overdrive active, if you're fighting Pharmacon, they don't have shield bypass on their weapons, you effectively reduce the amount of damage you take from that moment on. And again, unlike the garbage truck, it's not based off of some stupid little thing of you have to take damage over time. No, it's based off of damage. So it can fill more than one role. It could be an escort ship that can turn into a tank at a moment's notice. So let's say you're using bastions because you needed them to outrange certain targets that you could easily tear apart. And you want the bastions so in case the shield cracks and you need them to destroy the target. So, sacrifice the bastion. Or you can take 2 destroyers and 3 of these little things, and they can effectively do the bastion's job, because you mix this with harmonic chase thrusters, and oh my, do we have something interesting going on. But the greatest comparison for it is to the Renaissance and the Phoenix. The Renaissance due to the shield regeneration that gets due to ability. This little guy has a little bit by default, and that's going to be very interesting. And one thing you also may have noticed, and that I didn't bring up, it has no class, and this is the first ship in the game that has no class that I'm aware of. It's not a specialist like the Tyrants or anything, it truly has no class. And it's just... I can see very, very good farming potential with this, but I can see even better compatibility with certain ships. The Zeus can effectively become a tank for you, but it's a fragile tank. Its shield is how it tanks. Oh man. We got 3 days before the monthly event begins, and I can't wait, because on day 1... Oh, the best part about it is, I almost forgot to say, the build time is only 1 day. I can save up the time tokens and spend gold between now and then, and build one on day 1, lightly fit it, and play around with it in the first hour of the event. Oh wait, a mistake in there, because every single monthly event so far has had Altairian tokens. We can build an entire fleet of these ships using nothing but the build tokens, because we get, count them, 6 build tokens from a monthly event for the Altairians. And because this is an Altairian ship, we get to build 6 of them. It's just that simple. I wish I had hands-on experience with the ship. I wish they would launch a campaign fairly quick, like that we could earn it and stuff like that, because well, not really earn the blueprint, but get a pre-built ship that you could equip, and it gives you all level 1 items and stuff like that, because I would love to showcase the ship at this exact moment. But right now we can only look at it and its weapon. Oh, and also the Pharmacon got a plasma screen, but nobody cares about that. We're all here for the new ship that it literally looks like it's going to be a stupidly entertaining ship. However, there is drawbacks about it, and I'll talk about them after we talk about the weapon, because now it's on to the weapon's turn. We have the glance cannon before us. And the first thing you're going to notice is it is in fact a cannon weapon. This means that it can be affected by the Bastion's range boost. It can be affected by the optics increase and stuff like that. You could increase the range of this weapon to over 6,000 meters using just a Bastion and Celestial Optics 3. You can further increase that range by mixing it with the new fleet commander, whose name I always forget, and I think it's Cobus. Yeah, hi Cobus. I like to misspell your name and say that with a C. The easiest way to remember this is his name is Dr. Casey. Back to the weapon though. It's going to be exciting. That's all I have to say. It has a 5-degree spread because it actually fires in 3 separate projectiles. You have one that goes down the middle, from what I've seen in the GDIAX's video, which I can't wait to see how it functions, but I can't wait to throw a few of them on the bastions and just have a grand time with basing with this thing. And that's another thing that I'm going to bring up. You can set this up on a bastion, carefully build it up, and if I'm not mistaken, the range of it on a bastion due to their innate range boost is just a little bit less than that of a destroyer, so you could use it effectively as a destroyer if you wanted to. And everything behind the target will be chained just because it can, and it'll be hit for 100% of the damage, but it'll only be hit for like, what, 2 chains? Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and let's just take a quick look. 2,500 meters per second, that's not the best, and it doesn't home because it's like a shotgun, like I said, so you can't guarantee you're going to hit anything if the player is quick on their feet. Ricochet, it has 2 by default, and it can ricochet. A single target can be hit 5 times. So keep that in mind, a single target can only be hit 5 times. The ricochet detection range is 3,750 meters, the base range. So for anything that's clumped up, you can sneeze once in its general direction and you could hit quite a few targets. And then you have the maximum ricochet angle, which is where the stat that I pointed out earlier comes into effect. The maximum ricochet angle is 115 degrees by default. However, if you use it with the Zeus, it's 180 degrees. So anything behind the targets and 90 degrees to the right and 90 degrees to the left of the impacted zone is going to be hit so long as they're within the ricocheted projectile's range. Oh, wait a second. The ricochet detection range is 3,750. The ricochet projectile range is 4,500. So it can acquire them within 3,750 meters and target to them, but the projectile itself will travel 4,500 meters. That's interesting. That means that there could be something. If it homes in, the target moves out of range. Would it still track the target and impact them? That's something we're going to have to play around with. But that's it. There was no specials added for it that I noticed. There is nothing else. But this little ship, it took the idea that I mentioned way earlier on about basically removing the weakness of the Altairians, and that is their shields. Their shields are just trash. They just can't really regenerate that well. Or at least that was how it was until the Renaissance Mark II came around. The garbage truck version 2.0. And all of a sudden, they're extremely good against the Pharmacon. Still not the best. Naturally, a destroyer and frigate mix, or no, not frigate, a destroyer and battleship mix would be better because in PvP, no one who's playing as a daemon wants to get within range because they don't want to be hit. They want to have the advantage of range so that they can fire on you and then go into phase before you can close in and fire, or time their shots so that they can shoot you and you can't shoot back. Well, in the case of the destroyers, you can outrange them. And this is where I brought up the thing earlier. This little ship will make an exceptional addition to them because all it has to do is take damage to enhance itself. So, you know, a daemon in PvP punches it, it kind of tilts its head to the freaking left a little bit and looks back up. You know, you punched it, you activate its overdrive. Now you can't damage it under that shield, and it's going to be boosting that shield strength and maintaining it for X number of seconds. The maximum is 9 seconds. But again, 300 damage. If you can get the ship to around 20,000 hit points, every 300 damage you take, you're going to be basically activating that overdrive. You're going to be essentially in a state of continuous indestructibility underneath the shell against Pharmacon targets, so long as they're not using any type of bypass on the shields. So you're going to be basically just rushing through everything they're sending. But now here comes the drawback that I was also talking about. It has no stasis resistance at all. And for a change, I'm actually thinking of devoting a few of my stasis resistors to a few of these ships because they're going to be worth it in my eyes. And where are all my stasis? There we go. I'm literally going to think of adding the plasma stasis resistors to them. And it's only going to be used on my Zeuses. I have never put a plasma stasis resistor on any of the major ships that I use at all. Every now and then I think I have like 2 bastion fittings with 1 apiece, and it was just for a stupid little test. This ship, I can see it being beneficial because the tiny amount of stasis resistance you'll get from it should be just enough to maintain your target. On top of that, alternatively, depending on what you're being hit by, you can also match. And you can add the counter chains and stuff that you need. But this is going to be an extremely exciting ship. And I think the video's run on for long enough. I've shared my excitement. It's extremely fast. It's like no ship before it. It's 30 meters per second slower than any of the battle cruisers or cutters in the game. But its rotation speed is godlike. Its strafe speed is godlike. It's got the movement speed sector of a frigate. Well, no, not a frigate, a cutter. But then it's got innate shield regeneration of a small amount, so if you're careful to begin with Mark 1, you could effectively make it a god tier ship because you could use it as a tank. As long as you time the amount of damage you take along with the overdrive and maintain the shields. So, don't let the shields be depleted, but just maintain them. You should be able to do extremely well with this little ship. And one thing else, I keep saying it's got cutter-like everything. It's got cutter-like firing arc as well. But this is going to be an extremely interesting small ship, and honestly, the mixability with the fleets is going to be the best part about it. I can see it being decent against countering Pharmacon in PvE, not really PvP, because if you're smart, you're going to avoid it, or you're just going to nuke it to death. But again, like I said, if they nuke it and start to, it's going to activate the overdrive, and it's just going to hunker down and sit underneath its indestructible shell, staring at you with a freaking shotgun, just waiting for you to pop up so it can blow your face off. But go ahead and share your thoughts on the Zeus below. This is the first time that I've been excited for a ship for... I can't even remember how long now. It's just, it feels right. I have to say that. It feels right for the Altairians to finally have innate shield regeneration on a ship with no delay. The Ricochet mechanic is interesting. I'll have to see how it plays out. But even more than that, it looks good as well. That's one thing I didn't really mention. It looks good. And unlike with the Corvettes that spawn from the mothership target, it's not flying frickin' backwards. This is the rear of the ship. This is the front. And it looks good. And I can't wait to get my hands on it and actually experiment with it. But even more than that, I cannot wait for it to be added to the shop in here once it gets around to it being added and being retrofitted. Because I will pick up one of them, an Oni version or a retro version, just because I like how it looks. It will be for no other reason. It will just be a Mark 1 just for the looks. And it will most likely be the Oni version when it comes out because I actually like the black and red look for the Altairian ships. But that's going to be it, everybody. Now I truly am going to stop chatting your ear off. What do all of you think of the Zeus, the glance cannon, the Ricochet mechanic? Just, do you like how the ship looks? It looks beautiful in my eyes, better than some of the ships we've gotten lately. It seems interesting mechanically based, and it's going to be a massive discussion going forwards. I can just see it. That's it, everybody. Be safe out there in the void, and as always, everybody, I will see you in the next video.